Alright, this is going to be a review of my games from the Season 18 Mushi League Finals. Tiger Suit and playing for the Wishing Star Jirachis, and I'm playing against RedCrimp, who's playing for the Psychic Guardians. Let's take a look at the team I'm using for Game 1. So all the teams I'm using in this set, and I guess really for all of playoffs, the primary person helping me build those was Ferdazi, so it felt inappropriate to go over the teams and not give him that credit. He's has been a huge influence in the way I build teams and think about the game in general. So we have Psychic Fire mixed Metagross with Mash and Explosion. Got pretty standard Def Me there. I got Rat Girl, the DD Tyranitar. This has become my favorite Tyranitar set, the max HP, 201, 202 speed, Dragon Dance sets. I have Charizard with Beat Up and Dragon Claw. I have the 3-attack Curse Snorlax with Double Edge, EQ, and Shadow Ball. I've really become a big fan of the Curse 3-attack sets that drop Self-Destruct. I think those can be really threatening. And then I got the banned Claydol without Rapid Spin. Since Bakuno put out his video talking about ban Claydol, I've been messing around with it a lot. I believe he ran Spin on his. I've been messing around with dropping Spin on it on teams with a secondary Spin because I like the entry points Claydol gets. I like its ability to be immediately threatening while simultaneously bluffing the Rapid Spin. There are games where I certainly wish I had the secondary Spin option, but in general, Def Me is quite sturdy, so I've become quite a big fan of dropping it when I'm able to. So let's jump over to the game. I'm going to try to do a decent job about getting through these games without a ton of pausing. I'm primarily doing this review for my own benefit. I haven't really watched these games back since like the day of or the day after we played and I reviewed them, so there's going to be stuff I don't remember, but really at the point I'm at now with the game, I'm trying to, as much as possible, get better at reviewing my own replays, like identifying mistakes, identifying win conditions I didn't notice at the time. So that's my primary interest with doing this in the first place. So start out with Metagross leads on both sides. I go to Charizard, so he goes for Earthquake. I actually have, it doesn't happen all the time. Every now and then you'll see in the Metagross lead mirror there, you'll see the Metagross players go for like Rock Slide, presumably trying to catch like a Zapdos entry. So given that I'm mixed meta, it's very unfavorable for me to stay in against opposing meta because they're presumably banded and I don't have Earthquake, so Hit a Power Fire does like 40%, so definitely not worth staying in. So luckily I get the free Charizard entry point there. I go for Flamethrower as he goes into Melodic. I likely go Snorlax here. Yeah, I go Snorlax and catch Toxic's a free entry. I do immediately go for Curse here. So it's potentially reasonable to double back into either Metagross or Charizard here. I mean, there's almost no chance that the Melodic's going to stay there. So going back to Metagross is fairly likely. And then, of course, if he has a Skarmory, which is certainly likely with Melodic, Meta lead with Melodic is a little unusual, so I wasn't sure on that, but he certainly going back to the Metagross was likely. So I think Curse is a fine play. I don't think it's bad, but doubling back into Charizard would have been, I think, very doable. At the same time, though, Charizard with this set, especially without Toxic, I don't really make any lasting progress on the Melodic, so it wouldn't have done me a whole lot of good just to bring it back in there. So he goes for Spike, and I just start blasting away. I do really like running Focus Punch over Earthquake on this set, but in this particular game, I felt that it was necessary to have the additional help against opposing meta. So that's why I'm running the Earthquake there. So I just smash into him as he goes for Spike. And I probably just do it again here. I do, he goes for Roar. I mean, that's still not bad. After Lefty's going to turn into Protector, it'll be like 50% damage that will have stuck. So he roars Metagross in. I go for, I probably reveal HP Fire here. Yeah, I do. So at this point, it's almost certain that he's going to go back into the Melodic. He really, from his perspective, he has no reason not to, unless he's going to assume that I'm going to boom on this turn, which Metagross looks like it's in a decent position. I mean, it's full health still. It's threatening a Skarmory. There's dual metal or dual steel types on the opposing side, so HP Fire is going to be reasonably threatening throughout the game. So, given that, I decide that I just need to get the Melodic out of the way. It's going to prevent my Charizard from doing really any kind of lasting damage throughout the game. So, certainly consider it worthwhile to get that out of the way. I get rid of the Spike as he goes Blissey. He reveals Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt reveal is actually quite significant with the team I'm running. Seeing that I'm beat up Charizard and I'm down a Mon, beat up is only going to be threatening to Blissey if it doesn't have a status move, and once it reveals Thunderbolt, it's almost certainly not going to have Thunder Wave or Toxic, so at this point, if the Blissey comes in on a healthy Charizard, like a Charizard that can eat a Thunderbolt, then beat up's going to be extremely threatening still, which that's always something you kind of have to keep in mind when you go for the early boom on beat up Charizard teams. So I go back into Claydol here, which is good. I was expecting on the Thunderbolt. The one downside of well, not the only downside, but one of the big downsides of banned Claydol, especially now that Vapicuno is like popularized a little bit more, is that if you come in and take any damage and reveal you don't have lefties, they're almost immediately going to know what you're running. So entries like that there where I don't take any damage are pretty crucial early on, even though I then turn around and immediately reveal that I'm banned by the Rock Slide damage. RedCrimp's a good player. He's presumably on the ball enough to recognize that the damage range means that I'm banned. So could I have doubled out there? I mean, he's almost certainly going to spike. I mean, there's no spikes up and he's in on half health. Skarmory. Him clicking spikes there is almost certain. Like, doubling to Charizard would have been quite safe. So, I don't know if I love that Rock Slide, actually, in retrospect. I think going Charizard there would have been probably a better play. But I don't hate it. I mean, getting the damage to stick. If I can get through the Skarmory, get it down into, like, where a +1 double edge from Wax will kill it, I'll be in good shape. So, I'm in a relatively decent position now anyway, so I don't hate just taking the damage trade. But in retrospect, I think I probably should have gone Zard there. I go back into Starmie here on what I'm expecting to be a Protect, and he actually goes to Claydol, so that's fine. It's going to be a free recovery turn for me. Do I decide to get rid of the spikes here? I don't. I decide to go back to Claydol on the Thunderbolt. And I double to Charizard here, expecting the Skarmory to come in, so I do catch that one. And at this point, I can just click. I don't even need to make any kind of prediction with beat up. I can just click Flamethrower, because if he brings Blissey in here, I'm still threatening to kill it with 2 beat ups and it doesn't have a status move to stop that. So I Flamethrower into the Blissey, go for the first beat up. This team has pretty decent attack stats, so it does a fair bit. So he goes for Thunderbolt and he gets the full para. So that's honestly a pretty devastating bit of RNG there, because this Charizard was extremely threatening. They have 2 steel types and a Blissey that can't deal with beat up, so that's really rough for him, especially now with only 4 hits of beat up. I'm not going to be able to do enough to out damage the soft boileds especially without sand up. So at this point, Charizard no longer does anything to Blissey. He can just sit in and click soft boiled in my face until he gets a full pair and then threaten to kill me the next turn. So I presume I leave here. I go back to Tyranitar. So he does go for the soft boiled. So do I like going Tyranitar there? I don't hate it. I mean, the soft boiled is likely. Getting your Tyranitar in front of Blissey on a free entry is never bad, especially since I'm leftovers. I'm going to get half the spike damage back. But I think going Claydol there likely would have been better. I'm not sure, actually. I don't hate this. At this point, my most realistic win condition in my head at this point is the Snorlax, because with the DD Tyranitar, with both Claydol and Metagross at full HP, I'm really never going to be able to get 2 Dragon Dances up without taking damage, which is what I would need to one-shot the Metagross. And I don't have HP Bug, so even if this is a frail Claydol at +1, I have no chance of killing it with Double Edge. So the Tyranitar isn't going to sweep this game. It's basically relegated to being a breaking point. So I imagine that's what I was thinking at the time, and I just decide that, all right, we gotta start trying to break for the Snorlax late game. So I go for the Dragon Dance as the Metagross comes in, and at this point I'm happy just to take the Earthquake damage. And he actually booms, which is favorable for me. I don't know the damage calc offhand for Band Metagross against max HP Tyranitar. I doubt that I have any chance of living a Band Mash, so that's presumably favorable for me. I mean, I guess I get from his perspective, he's in good shape with the Charizard paralyzed, so he can afford just to take out one of the few pieces that would threaten him. So he trades, he goes into Skarm, I go into Claydol. This might be one of the spots where I would prefer to have Rapid Spin, even though I mean Claydol isn't doing anything in front of Skarm at this point anyway. Like, yeah, the Rock Slide doing 21, I'm barely out damaging his Leftovers recovery with protecting every other turn. So I likely could have exited there. I mean, I'm still in the back of my head just thinking that I need to get the Skarmory low enough that Lax can break through it with Double Edge. So I don't hate the idea of just taking some damage there, especially since, I mean, the Claydol is almost certainly going to go out with a Boom. So I still have plenty of opportunity to do that, even if I take like a Toxic. That's what I was expecting, but he actually has Drill Peck. So I don't hate that, even though it's really not doing a whole lot for me at this point. I go Starmie on the Protect. Yeah, I'm just trying to get any kind of damage I can that will stick on the Skarmory. That's the only way I see forward from here. So I'd go back to Claydol. I'm expecting to be a Blissey entry. I get it. Do I decide to Boom here? I do. I like that Boom. I definitely needed the Skarmory out of the way. I was really struggling to get any kind of damage to stick on it with, I mean, Rock Slide only doing 20 to Skarmory that has Protect, and with Starmie just giving Blissey free entries every single time. I mean, if I can get Charizard in against, actually no, getting Charizard in doesn't do anything to help with Skarmory either, because again, it just gives Blissey free entries. I can't threaten it, so the only other thing that was going to do any damage to Skarmory was Snorlax, which with a Spike Down and this having Pack, I don't want to just start sacrificing its HP, so I like that Boom there. Definitely needed to get Skarm out of the way. I think that was preserving my path to victory. And he actually goes to Dugtrio, which I guess I should have been expecting. I actually don't remember what I was thinking at the time. And he decides to stay in, which from his perspective, he's ahead, so I don't think that's not like a losing move. I mean, he really has no reason to not go to Blissey. The Starmie can't do anything to Blissey, and I mean, these two are both so slow. I mean, theoretically, I guess if he goes to Blissey as I Surf, and then I bring in Snorlax on the next turn as he goes for, say, Thunderbolt, then I'm Lax at 60% HP and I'm threatening something. So I get from his perspective that he's basically just avoiding a lot of things that could potentially go wrong by clicking Earthquake there, even though I think it probably would have been harder for me to win if he decided to stay in. So we trade those two pieces. So at this point, I am against full health Claydol, basically full health Blissey. I have 40% paralyzed Charizard, and I have Snorlax, who's relatively healthy, can take a couple hits from Claydol, especially once it gets a curse up. But my only way of winning this game is if he either doesn't have Explosion on Claydol, which is, I think, unlikely, especially because he has an aggressive Metagross, so he's not trying to play like extremely slow V5 game. So I have to assume he's going to have Boom on Claydol, and I need him to Boom into the Charizard. So I'm not going to go overanalyze this. In my head, I'm thinking I need to send the Snorlax in, get a curse up, and basically hope that that +1 Snorlax feels threatening enough to him that he decides just to Boom on it, and I can bring Charizard in on the turn he booms. So he goes for Psychic, as I go for Curse, and at this point it all comes down to, can I bait the Boom? I go to Charizard, and he clicks Psychic again. So he got the mind game right, which I don't know if that was even realistically possible. Like, was he even threatened? +1 Shadow Ball isn't killing. +1 Double Edge, I'm not going to calculate right now, but likely wasn't killing. So, and him being faster, he really has no reason to Boom there at full health. Maybe the optimal play would have been to Double Edge the first turn I'm in there as Lax. Like, bring the Claydol down to like 40% or something, and then hope that it then feels the need to Boom into Zard. That might have been a more realistic way to win the game, because I don't think from full health he's ever feeling threatened to Boom. So I think I probably misplayed that. He just goes for Psychic again, and at this point all I can hope is that he doesn't have Boom. But alas, he does. So I lose game 1, but it's a best of 3 set. I like this guy a lot. He's such a good sport. He said, sorry for the pair on Charizard. I really like RedCrimp. Nice guy. All right, let's go to game 2. So what are we using for game 2? Game 2 is by far the most straightforward of the teams I use this set. It hits I got Ban Tyranitar with straightforward Agigross with Slide. I have fully offensive Zapdos with Grass, T-Wave, Roar. I got Fire, Ice, Toss, Blissey. Have 3 attack, Curse, Death Pert. Set that I've seen for Dazzy used a lot, and he's recommended to me a couple times, which I've become quite a big fan of. Most games you don't even end up clicking Curse, but just if you need a tertiary win con against fat stuff to break through at the end, it can be real nice. And then Toxic HP Steel, Skarmory, one of my favorite sets for enabling these more straightforward spikes, sand offense teams. So let's switch over to the games. Let's go. So we got Tyranitar against Zapdos, and I just go for the straightforward Rock Slide here on turn 1. Reveal the Choice Band immediately, which is fine. There's really no way of hiding it there. I've gone back and forth on whether or not I like clicking Focus Punch or Rock Slide more in turn 1, especially in a team tour like Mushi where I'm trying not to throw. I think Rock Slide is just by far the safer play. If I'm on the ladder, good chance I click Focus Punch for fun, but I mean, those games where you click Focus Punch and you get Thunderbolted and reveal, I guess either Choice Band or Lum, but likely Choice Band in their mind, because Lum sets aren't usually running Focus Punch. So at that point, you take the T-Bolt and you don't recover lefties, and you're immediately in a very bad position. So I think Rock Slide is certainly the safer move. I go to Pert here, and he booms. I was actually recently having this debate, and even right before I had played this game, I had been discussing it with Seldenami for these spike sand offense teams. When you're facing what is likely a Houdini meta, like we are here with this coming in and revealing no lefties, is it worth sacrificing your primary defensive or physically defensive piece in Swampert, or sacrificing your Skarmory? So he and I were both of the opinion that it's generally preferable to preserve your Skarmory, because if you're playing an offensive team and you feel that the spikes are necessary for your offensive options to actually break through standard defensive walls, then it makes more sense to preserve your win con and hope that you can play around opposing offensive stuff. Players who are better than me have told me that they consider sacrificing Skarmory there to be just strictly better than sacrificing Swampert. So I'm not going to really try to argue against that in my head, and especially this game was played almost a month ago. So at the time I was playing it, I certainly was thinking we preserve Skarmory over preserving Swampert. I think the reason that they were saying that it's better just to bring Skarmory in is that in the situation where it doesn't explode, having your Swampert in against Metagross is not nearly as beneficial for you as having your Skarmory in, because if you come in on Ban Mash, even if they do have a mag in the back, which is unlikely with Zapweed, it exists, but less likely, then having Skarmory in that position is stronger than having Swampert in that position where it isn't a boom. So I think that is the reasoning for that. So I'm probably going to start trying to play it that way and bringing Skarmory in there. But at the time, the Swampert sack to boom was very much intentional. He goes Zapdos, I go Skarmory. I really thought that with me having already revealed Ban Tyranitar and having just killed the Rock Check, that the Tyranitar entry would be really free from my perspective. So for that reason, I thought that he wouldn't go to Zapdos, just because he'd get immediately threatened out again. But I don't know if he wasn't considering that, or if he just was one step ahead of the mind game and decides to bring the Zap in. I mean, granted, with Tyranitar and Swampert revealed, it's very likely that I do have a Skarmory, so reasonable prediction for him to make. So I bring Blissey in. He goes for a sub. So there wasn't much in his scout that I was paying particular attention to. He was, for the most part, playing offensive teams. He had a good mix of styles. So there really wasn't anything I was particularly trying to counter team. I did know that he had used a lot of double electric teams, particularly with Metagross. So once I saw the Gross and the Zapdos, especially once it reveals Sub, I'm thinking it's one of his double electric special offense teams. So I'm worried about the Baton Pass here to his Doug. So I bring the Zap in on the Baton Pass, and he goes to Jolteon. So basically confirms that it is one of those double electric special offense. So he goes for Thunder Wave, and thankfully I have Roar. This is like a 50-50, so to speak, that I find myself getting right all the time. Once players have revealed Jolteon like this, and you're in a position where Thunderbolt will be the most damaging move for Zapdos to click, like the very first turn after the Jolteon reveal, they nearly always assume that you're going to respect it. So for that reason, I almost always just click the Thunderbolt. Now, really, at this point, the 50-50 is Sub on Roar or Thunder Wave, or Thunderbolt again on Jolteon coming in. And thankfully I click the Thunder Wave as he goes to Jolteon. So in a much better position there. So do I like that turn? Let's go back. So I get the Thunder Wave on the Jolteon. So at this point, the Zapdos is half HP and the Jolteon is paralyzed. So both have been somewhat neutralized, especially the Jolteon. So he is almost certainly going to have a Doug Trio. That's quite obvious. I don't think going Blissey here is strictly wrong. I'm not sure what I was expecting him to click in the moment. I don't remember what I was thinking. Him clicking Thunderbolt as I click HP, like I hit like HP Grass and do 30% to him, and he does like 45-50 to me, whatever that is. That's favorable to him. Him clicking Baton Pass, especially since he's faster with us both paralyzed, Baton Pass was probably the most likely option. That's what I should have been considering. At the same time, though, with the Jolteon paralyzed and with the Zapdos at half HP, the value of Blissey is not gone, especially since it's likely going to be at least one or two more special threats in the back. So Blissey still has value, but it's much less essential than it was. So I don't hate going Blissey here. I'm not sure what the alternative would have been. I could have gone to Tyranitar and taken about half my HP from a Thunderbolt as I come in, but I go to Blissey and he gets the Doug Trio in. So at this point, I don't hate it. I haven't gotten Spikes up yet, so I'm going to be able to get a lot of damage on the Doug Trio with Ice Beam, and then I'll be able to bring the Skarmory in as he finishes me off, and I'll get a free Spike. So all things considered, I don't think that's an unfavorable turn to me. I got in the habit, my coaches had recommended basically like once you hit a couple turns into the game, or like 5, 6, 7 turns in, basically try to verbalize what your win conditions is, like what your win conditions are, what you're going to be looking for going forward. So I was basically just typing it in my notepad. I mean, I remember specifically typing, I'm just going to accept the Doug Trio trap here, because if that's what he does, then so be it. I think I'll be in a playable position still. So I get my damage on the Doug Trio as he goes for 2 Earthquakes. Bring Skarman, and we get my free Spike. So he goes for T-Bolt, and I go for Roar. Bit of a 50-50 whether or not he's going to click Thunderbolt or click Substitute to try to pass again. Given that the Blissey is gone, I think him clicking T-Bolt is way more likely than clicking Sub. I think Sub would actually be a bad click from his perspective there. So at the same time, I wish I could remember exactly what I was thinking on that turn. I imagine I just wanted to start getting Spikes damage and revealing the stuff in the back, because I don't want to switch my Zapdos into the T-Bolt, especially since it's already paralyzed. It's going to take 2, and it might even die, given that it's fully offensive. I don't feel like taking 2 T-Bolts on entry onto Tyranitar, and I'm saving the Agility Gross in the back as the win condition. So realistically, I don't think I had a better choice than taking that on the Skarman. I think the Roar was definitely better than getting a second layer there. And fortunately, we get the Doug Trio in on the Roar, so I'm going to get another layer for free. I actually think I realistically should have clicked Roar there again. I'm surprised he went to Jolteon and not to Zapdos. He might have been fearing Toxic, so he brings in the Statist Jolteon to catch the Toxic as opposed to the Zapdos. I imagine that's what he was thinking. So I should have roared, because what he has on the back is going to determine if the Tyranitar or if the Agility Gross is more likely going to be a win condition. So given that the Doug trio is now okay, I wasn't quite thinking everything ahead of time. I imagine the thinking with the second spike there instead of roar is that given that the Doug trio is at 15%, the second layer kills the Doug trio. He's not going to have a spinner on this team. So for that reason, I don't hate the second spike because the Doug trio is now effectively dead and can't threaten the Tyranitar and a revenge kill, which is otherwise good. So for that reason, I actually like the second layer there. And since he brought the paralyzed Jolteon, I just take the third layer and accept death because I'm not willing to switch any of my other stuff into it to a T-Bolt. So I go Tyranitar here because, I mean, obviously it threatens both the Jolteon and the Zapdos, and the Doug trio can't enter because of spikes. So he just decides to sack the Doug, and he goes to Pert, which isn't what I was hoping to see. Thankfully, because he Doug sacked, I'm actually not locked in, so I have the option to attack the Swampert with something else here as opposed to being locked into Earthquake, so that is nice. So what is going on in the game at this point? So I have full HP, paralyzed Zapdos. I have Agility Gross in the back. Agility Gross without Boom has no way of getting through full HP Swampert, so Swampert needs to take damage. I do have HP Gross on the Zapdos, I am paralyzed, so I'm gonna take heavy damage to get a HP Gross off if he even lets me whatsoever. The Metagross it'll kill the Jolteon with Earthquake. It always outspeeds, and if it gets an Agility up, it'll kill Zapdos from this range with Rock Slide. So Agility Gross is looking good into both of the electrics. I have to hope that whatever he has last is also weak. I suppose at this point I probably could have checked the Scout again and saw what last he had been using with those double electric teams. I didn't know offhand. So at this point, my win condition appears to just be getting damage on the Pert so that the Agility Gross can break it. And I think I'm like 190 speed is what I ran on this Tyranitar, so I'm surprised that he outran me, so he's fully offensive Pert here. So thankfully I do have enough HP to live the Hydro, so I do get the Earthquake damage off, and it does quite a bit. It's clearly very offensive. It's taking 57% from a +1 EQ. So unfortunately, though, I was really hoping I was going to be able to get 2 off. And I decided to go Zapdos, and I died to a crit Ice Beam. That turn was... I don't like that turn. So I do know what I was thinking. In my head, even with the paralyzed... no, it was wrong. I think in my head at the time, I was thinking, okay, even with the Jolteon being paralyzed and with spikes up, the Zapdos doesn't threaten it because it has Volt Absorb, and I think even after spikes, it'll likely be... I don't even think it's 2-hit KO'd from Hidden Power. Maybe it's a roll. So I was thinking that I needed the Tar to threaten the Jolteon, but I don't. I have Metagross in the back, which always outspeeds, always one-shots. So Tar had no value for that point. Tar is always going to be outsped by the Zapdos, so it has no value there. It 100% should have been a sack. Switching Zapdos in here was strictly a bad play, especially since he has no reason to go for another water move. And with the Zapdos already revealed and him being off Pert, he's clicking Ice Beam there every single time. He has no reason to click anything other than Ice Beam. So strictly a bad move by me going to Zapdos there. I should have just stayed in sack. So I'm in real trouble now because of that misplay. So at this point, all I can do is send the Metagross in. Thankfully, I likely am faster because I'm running a little above 200 speed on this Metagross. I've started speed creeping my Agility Grosses to go faster than 396. And because he's off Pert, it's a roll for Earthquake to kill here. I think it's like a 45% chance if memory serves. It was something not quite 50%, but not an awful roll to kill with Earthquake. So I click the Earthquake and I get the crit. So I'd say the luck evened out, but his crit on my Zapdos didn't matter because I was paralyzed. So I can't even say that. So thankfully we got the Pert down. So at this point, he's substitute Baton Pass, so he's not going to have Thunder Wave, so I can freely set up an Agility in front of him just at the cost of half my HP. So really, this guy will go down after Rock Slide. This will always go down to Earthquake. I need to hope that whatever is in the back, either one, I can finish off with a half HP Metagross, or B, it's something really fat or a Cursemon that can get outrun by the 190 speed Choice Band Tyranitar. So not a favorable position for me, but doable. He actually goes for a sub, which I don't like. I mean, it doesn't make much of a difference. He's going to get one attack off either way here. So I go for the rock slide, and he goes for the T-bolt there. Yeah, it's effectively the same. I guess he gets to fish for... Does he get to fish for an extra rock slide miss? I'm not sure. I'm not going to work that out in my head right now. It's been a long day. The rock slide hits, Zapdos goes down, and it's Suicune. So if he is Surf, I can always take a Surf. If he's Hydro, max special attack, it's a roll. So I need to hope that he either... And it's not going to be a two-shot with Earthquake from this range. So I need him to miss... I need him to be Hydro and miss one of them. That is my only way to win this game. So I go for the first Earthquake, and he is Hydro, and he does miss. So I'm bailed out a little bit. I got my luck payoff from the first game. I do live the Hydro, and at this point the game is over. A little crit for good measure there, and he forfeits. So we're going to game 3. Let's take a look at the teams. This one is... The core of the Jirachi meta, Salamence, and Snorlax is something I've been building around with a lot. I've been really liking the Jirachi Metagross double HP Grass to remove Pert to break for Salamence, and I think that the Brick Break Salamence, or the Brick Break DD Salamence and the Snorlax have really nice synergy together. They remove each other's checks pretty decently. So that core of 4 is something I've been building with a lot. The Hypnosis Milo lead was Ferdazi's idea, so I went with that. I hate Hypnosis leads. I think they're one of the stupidest things about this tier. I almost never run sleep leads, so game 3 of the finals, no time better than that to bust it out, right? And then I would have loved to have run another Choice Band Clado. I think it would have fit really nicely offensively on this team, but with Milo, Lax, Jirachi meta, I felt like I needed a little bit more reliable of a spinning option there. So that's why we're running a little bit more traditional Clado. All right, let's get into it. So we got Milo against Tyranitar. We're just going to click Hydro turn 1, and he lives. Definitely, there's no way that's taken into account in the EVing, unless it overlaps with another Mon with the same special attack stat, like Suicune or something. So he does take a Hydro. I take a Rock Slide. He goes to Skarmory on the follow-up Ice Beam. Now, do I like that Ice Beam? I don't hate it. I mean, 9 HP Tyranitar, not that likely that you're going to get another meaningful hit out of it. I mean, it's always possible, especially if he's speed invested. He's not that fast because I outsped him and I'm 204, I think. So he's not max speed, but he might get another chance in. So for that reason, like clicking Ice Beam, assuming there's a possibility that he stays and I play around Hydro Miss, is certainly the safest play, but I think the switch is also a pretty real possibility, especially from testing. So I think there's a good argument that I could have clicked Hydro Pump there again. So I'm going to go for Hypnosis here and miss as he gets his first layer up. Switch those viewpoints, because they still haven't fixed this. And I imagine I just go for a second Hypnosis here. I missed the second one as well, so I was going to be like 40 when it next comes in. Thankfully, even on the offensive side, I am running Recover, so decent chance I'll be able to recover, but definitely on the back foot here already. So Jirachi comes in. I do get a Fire Punch off. I do get a crit, which is quite nice. No burn, but still helpful. He roars in the DD Ments. So this was one turn in particular I remember discussing with my team after the game because I don't think that I played it optimally. So I'm DD Brick Break, and I'm not threatening Skarmory. Both Brick Break and Rock Slide don't kill from 28. But after a turn of lefties, they will die to a +1 Brick Break or Rock Slide, and he didn't protect when the Jirachi came in, even though he could have for free. But I think there's a good chance that he's going to protect here, especially now that he's much lower than he was before. So Dragon Dance on the protect seems relatively safe, and it forces the Skarmory to go back out. But at the same time, he's almost certainly going to have something that easily comes in and checks the +1 Ments. And I'm revealing that I'm Dragon Dance. Granted, if I switch out, it's also revealing, not necessarily that I'm not revealing as much of my set, but any Mixed Ments is going to stay in there. There's no reason for a Mixed Ments to step out against a low HP Skarmory like this. So I think kind of no matter what I do here, I'm going to be revealing my set. If I click Brick Break on the Protect, that's the one option I have to conceal the set, but there's really, at that point, I still likely force the Skarmory out again, because even if I show Brick Break here, he's going to have to assume I have Fire Blast. So he'll switch out either way, and in that situation, I could then double out on the next turn and keep the possibility of Mix alive. I think that Mind Game is likely the best option I could go for there. I'm not certain. Actually, if any of you have a good understanding of the tier and have an opinion on what would have been best here on turn 7, then I'd be curious to hear it, really. So I do go for Dragon Dance, though. So I reveal my set, but I am quite threatening to the Skarmory, and depending on what he switches in, I might smack something fairly hard. But it's a Swampert, and I do 14% with the +1 Rock Slide. So that's a very physically bulky Swampert, and this Ments is going to do almost nothing to it. Thankfully, though, we do have HP Grass on both Jirachi and Metagross, specifically for this reason. So only downside is I've now revealed my set. So I go to Milo, which probably the best entry points for Milo, and he goes for Toxic, so revealing likely Monopert with Protect Refresh, which is actually, all things considered, pretty good for me. It means that the Snorlax is going to have a really good time into this, because all it's going to be able to threaten me with is Surf. So Snorlax is looking quite good. Similarly with the Metagross, Metagross will always be able to trade down favorably in its face with Surf versus HP Grass. So for those reasons, it being Monopert is pretty favorable for me. Taking the Toxic there on Melodic is unfortunate because I'm not running Refresh on the offensive set. I click Recover there. I'm actually expecting him just to protect with the Swampert because those Toxic sets almost always run it, but he goes Skarmory instead. I'm definitely expecting Protect here, though, since he's already revealed it. But he actually doubles out again, and I click Hydro Pump. He might have gotten a little bit ahead of the curve, or that might have been like a little bit of an over-predict from his perspective. So from my perspective, he has no reason not to click Protect there. He gets more lefties on the Skarm. At this point, I've revealed all 4 of my moves, so he knows I'm not Refresh. I'm Toxic. There's a Spike down, so anything that comes in is going to be taking damage. I mean, theoretically, the Jirachi is relatively threatening. The Ments is not threatening whatsoever with Swampert being healthy. So from his perspective, I'm not sure why he switched out there. He must have been thinking the Protect on Skarm here is so obvious that I'm going to get one step ahead of that, and I'm going to bring in the Gengar on what I bring in. But at the same time, I'm likely going to be bringing in Jirachi. I revealed Fire Punch, but I don't know if he bothered calculating the damage roll. The damage roll on the Fire Punch reveals that I'm Special Attack invested. So a Special Attack invested Jirachi with Fire Punch is fairly likely to have Psychic. Not guaranteed. It could be like Sub-CM. There are tons of different, especially offensive Jirachi sets. But I don't love, like, even if he assumes that I am going to bring Jirachi in on that turn, which would be the most obvious move I have to threaten the Skarmory after the Protect, I don't think Gengar really answers that. So I'm not certain what he was thinking, unless he thought that I was going to be going for a Spinner. But I don't know what Spinner I'd be bringing in the face of Skarmory. Like, theoretically, Death Me, maybe? So I'm not certain what that was, but either way, I get the Hydro Pump on the Gengar as it comes in, and that certainly brings me back into the game immediately. He doubles out as I go to Claydol. Yeah, I'm expecting Thunderbolt there, and I'll be able to finish the Gengar off with Psychic. So he has to respect that, and he goes to Tyranitar. I bring Jirachi in on a HP Bug, so it's like BKC Tar. I finish him off with HP Grass. So at this point, I revealed Fire Punch and HP Grass both. So certainly possible that I still have Psychic. It could be a CM3 attack. It even could be like you see those like the Wish Protect, Fire Punch, HP Grass. Jirachi says, I don't know if those run special attack investment. I don't remember offhand, but I know those sets do exist. So he goes to Zapdos. I bring Claydol back in. He goes for the Thunderbolt. He doesn't bother trying to predict with HP Grass or HP Ice, which makes sense from his perspective. I mean, clicking hidden power in the face of especially attack invested Jirachi that could theoretically have Ice Punch. I mean, Fire Grass Ice is not unheard of, so that would have been a really unfavorable turn for him. I primarily switched out respecting the fact that it could be Thunder Wave, and I'm not willing to eat a Thunder Wave on the Jirachi, so I do get the free Claydol entry, and he reveals Toxic, so he's likely not even going to have hidden power, so Claydol will be able to get relatively free entries against the Zapdos. At least that's what I'm thinking at the time. I'm thinking that this is likely going to be a especially defensive Zapdos. Especially since we have Mono Pert, we have BKC Charles, so we'll get like a fairly defensive squad. So I'm expecting this to be a rest, especially defensive Zapdos. So I do get rid of the Spike. He doesn't bother bringing the Gengar in. And I bring Snorlax in on Protect. So once he reveals Protect on Zapdos, he's almost certainly going to be the Thunderbolt, HP Ice, Tox-Tech set. So still quite good for me. Snorlax is looking strong. I mean, the Gengar can burn me, but the Gengar will die. Even after a burn, it'll die to a Shadow Ball. Skarmory is at 40%, so if it comes in on a Double Edge or even comes in on a Curse, it's going to be taking a lot of damage before it can get me out. Mono Pert doesn't really threaten Snorlax. Zapdos with Toxic Protect doesn't really threaten Snorlax either, so Snorlax is looking incredibly strong at this point, especially if I can keep spikes off. So he goes to Skarmory as I go for Curse. Was that Curse a good move? I think there's a decent argument that clicking Double Edge is better there. I mean, the biggest thing Curse does is it covers the Skarmory versus Gengar mind game. It's fine into both of those. I think him trying to go, from his perspective, going Gengar there, especially when you've already shown that you're low like that, there's a very real possibility that I click Shadow Ball there, especially since throughout this set I've shown that I'm willing to try to play one step ahead of those switches. There are some players who you'll play a set with them and they just don't go for any of those plays. It's not even a skill issue. Some people just choose not to play like that. But at this point, I've shown a willingness to make those kinds of plays. So from his perspective, already being on the back foot, if he loses this Gengar to a Shadow Ball on entry, it's almost just over. He has no recourse against the Wax at that point. I have too many defensive pieces. He's not going to get a boom off on me. So going Skarmory is certainly safer. But for that reason, I do think, from my perspective, clicking Double Edge, expecting the Skarm to come in, is a fine play, especially since I can always Curse on a Protect turn later. But I get the Curse up as he goes Skarmory. And at this point, it's still looking really good for me because he doesn't have spikes up. So if he chooses to roar me, he's going to take 30% from +1 Double Edge and not even have a spike up. And at this point, his Skarmory is low. He's behind. I don't know if, from his perspective, he can win without getting a spike up. So I think he feels almost obligated to go for a spike here. So for that reason, he's not going to get the chance. He's not going to be able to get a spike and roar the Wax out. So the Wax is looking still incredibly threatening. And he does go for spike because I hit him with the first Double Edge for 35. So he can't take another one and roar me. He could go for Drill Peck if he has it, but he's in trouble. He goes Gengar here, and I go for Double Edge. So this is probably the most critical decision I need to make for the end game here is, am I willing to accept the Will-O-Wisp on Wax to kill the Gengar? So Skarmory is 17%. If I kill the Gengar, I'll be able to spin for free at any point with the Claydol. He won't have an explosion, a Ghost type to absorb explosion anymore, even though he hasn't revealed Protect yet on the Swampert. He hasn't revealed on the Swampert. The Skarmory and the Zapdos have both revealed Protect at this point. So he likely has 3 Mons with Protect, which is going to make the Explosion Mind game a little bit more difficult. Especially since, the Skarmory can always just absorb it, switching in anyway, because it's so low that the value isn't that high. But the Claydol looks quite strong if I'm able to kill the Gengar. The Brick Break the Brick Break DD Men's is looking decent if I can get rid of the Gengar. The Swampert is still the primary wall for that. the biggest reason, the biggest argument I think for accepting the Wisp and just killing the Gengar is one, even after a burn, +1 here with Double Edge against what he has left in the back is still going to be really threatening. I'm still going to be able to, I don't know if I'd be able to kill the Skarmory, probably not with Protects. I'm still going to be extremely threatening to both of the Swampert and the Zapdos. So even if I like eat the burn here as to kill the Gengar, it's not like the value of the Lax goes to 0. It drops a lot, especially with against 3 Protect mons that can just eat the or can burn. Can basically stall turns as burn damage ticks down to the Lax. That's quite threatening, but I've also kind of shown that I'm an offensive team, so he doesn't have any reason to play around rest on the Lax. But at the same time, going for those obvious protects just gives me more opportunities to curse, even with the burn on me. So, like, from his perspective, the Lax isn't dealt with just because he gets a burn on it. But he doesn't have a whole lot of options at this point anyway, at least from my perspective. So at this point, I'm saying if I get rid of this Gengar, I remove the possibility for the Gengar to ever get a Will-O-Wisp on the 4 attack HP Grass Metagross in the back that has Explosion as well. Like, at that point, I don't see a way I can lose the game. So I decide just to stay in and kill the Gengar here. He goes for Wisp and misses. So unfortunate for him, for sure. My luck in these last 2 games really did turn around. I think I was going to be in a very favorable position regardless at that point, like even if I am burned here, but very difficult for me to lose the game from this point. So he goes Arrow, and honestly, I have no reason to switch out. Like at +1 defense, the Rock Slide's going to be doing like 30% to me. If he wants to go for 3 flinches in a row, that's fine. That's fine for me. I can accept that risk. Because even if he kills me here with Rock Slide, I'm able to bring in the Metagross, which is going to be extremely threatening to everything here. I still have the DD Ments in the back, so at this point, I'm just trying to get any damage on the Arrow so that it'll die to a follow-up from anything else. So he actually doubles out to the Skarmory. I'm not sure what he was expecting I was going to do there. Most likely, he probably thought that I was going to bring in the Quaidol on a Rock Slide, in which case, since I'm toxic, he'd just be able to sit here and spam Protect in my face and get some HP back as I go for spins or whatever. So I get going for that play. I mean, he basically has to try to get ahead of a switch like that at this point, but I have no reason to switch out. I'm just going to be sitting here clicking Double Edge until this Mon dies. Or maybe I will. No spoilers. So at this point, I've already shown my willingness to stay in. So he goes for the Rock Slide and doesn't get the flinch. I do 64 with Double Edge. He switches out, and I actually go to Quaidol here. And the reason I go to Quaidol is very specific. So I know that both the Swampert and the Zapdos have Protect. They've both revealed it. So for me, the safest opportunity I will get to boom with Quaidol will be against an Aerodactyl that's locked into Rock Slide. Because if I click Explosion in there, we either trade and the arrow goes down. If the arrow goes down, he has no way of winning the game. Or he switches one of the other 2 in and dies to the Explosion because he's not going to be able to protect on the switch. So clicking Double Edge there is a winning play for me. Going Quaidol on the Rock Slide is also a winning play. So there was a reason why I did that, but he ends up doubling to Zapdos as I do that anyway, which I'm surprised he was willing to sacrifice the full HP Zapdos to a Double Edge, but he is. I go for Psychic on the first Protect, and at this point I'm just clicking Explosion. He goes for Hidden Power, doesn't get a crit, wouldn't have been enough anyway, and the Zapdos goes down. He goes back to Arrow, I go to Milo, because Milo takes a hit, or if it either... I did the calc, so it either it doesn't die to a Rock Slide, and if I avoid a flinch, I kill it with Ice Beam. And if it locks into anything else, then I can bring in the either the Ments or the Jirachi for free afterwards. So Milo is like definitely the most sackable bomb into the Arrow at this point. So send the Milo in, and he gets the Rock Slide flinch. So Milo goes down, not really an issue. So he just decides to stay and play for the Rock Slide flinch. Really all we can do at this point. He doesn't get it, and he goes down to Psychic. And at this point, the HP Grass Jirachi will finish off the Swampert, and that is going to be the end of the series.
So I went on to win the series, and the Jirachis went on to win the finals. I think it was first to 7, and I believe I think we won 7-4, 7-5, something like that. So GG's to RedCrimp, another newer player who's had some really impressive runs. I know he had like a really deep ADV Revival 2 run. Nice guy, was a really good sport, even about getting kind of hacked out those last 2 games. So GG's to him, like him a lot. And yeah, I guess since we're at the end of the video anyway, I guess I'll just figure I should do a quick shout out to like all the captains and coaches on the Jirachis. This was my first experience with competitive Pokemon whatsoever. I had been like casually playing ADV on ladder for like most of 2024, but the season of Mushi was like my first time playing seriously whatsoever. So like JR, Bayoon, Blaze, FJ2K, Ferdazi, all the guys there who and adore, like all those guys who kind of made the Jirachi culture what it was. I'm very thankful to them. I had a ton of fun. I'm looking forward to playing again next season. So really, it meant a lot to me. I felt very welcomed into the community. So thanks to them for all the support and the help team building and dealing with all my obnoxious questions as I figure out how to build teams that don't break all of H-Class rules. So thanks for watching, guys. I'm not sure what I'm going to post next. If I have a good series with somebody in any of these events I'm doing, I'll probably upload those. I might start doing some laddering stuff. I love making videos for other games I've played, so I hope to be pretty active with this channel. But yeah, thanks for watching. Stay tuned.